Now, when she is looking at the dressing table, she is looking at herself as if a priestess. She is standing in front of the altar. Hello and welcome back to Nibblepop. We have already started this series on the Rape of the Lock by Alexander Pope, and you have already watched the first introductory video. This is going to be the first video on the textual reading, and we will be taking up the first canto. If you haven't watched the introductory video yet, I advise you strongly to do that. If not right now, then right after you finish watching this video. In the meantime, if you haven't subscribed to my channel, please do so that you can be notified anytime a new video comes up on my channel. And this is a huge shout out to Bipro Sarkar for pestering me and really keeping my interest grow every day for doing this series. So without wasting any more time, let's jump straight into the text with the first canto itself. I have already read to you the letter or the dedication part that Pope wrote addressing Arabella Farmer. So I will straight away begin from the part where the poem itself starts. Canto 1 will give us the everyday routine of Belinda, and it will begin with her morning ritual and how she prepares herself to meet other people and socialize. But Canto 1 is also the beginning of the poem, so it contains some very important conventions which we usually find in epics. The very first part of this canto or this poem involves a kind of invocation. Now, if you have watched the videos on Paradise Lost, you already know what an invocation is. An invocation is some sort of prayer for inspiration that a poet writes addressing some muse. Muse is like an inspiring goddess who will help him or her write something which is epic in size. Now, we have seen this in Paradise Lost, we have seen these things in Horace and Virgil. So this is a very common convention for epics. Here what Pope does is takes this convention and transforms it to suit his purpose. What dire offence from amorous causes springs? What mighty contests rise from trivial things? Usually, an epic poet, he states the crux of his poem, or rather the central concern of his poem, in the very first line. Like we have seen in Milton's Paradise Lost, he uses the expression of man's first disobedience and the fruit of that forbidden tree and so on. So he gives the exact theme in the first line or lines. This is something which even Alexander Pope is doing. His central theme is dire offense. Dire means great, of high proportion, something which is of a big stature. Offense is, of course, doing something wrong. So some great crime is committed, which is his central theme. But that crime is committed from amorous causes. Amorous means something related to love, relationships, intimacies. So some crime related to love affair. What mighty contests? Contests means struggles, conflicts, fights. So he's going to talk about some fights that's going to come out of this dire offense from trivial things. Now he, in the very beginning, establishes the fact that his poem is going to be on trivial things. Trivial means something which has no significance, something which is of no worth when it comes to questions like humanity, questions like philosophical thoughts. So something which is very trivial, inconsequential, has no value. I sing. And then he uses a very heavily used word, I sing this verse to Carol. Muse is due. This even Belinda may vouchsafe to view. So we have three things here, three characters here. One is Carol, one is Muse, one is Belinda. He is talking about his friend John Carroll, who asked him to write this poem. So in a way, Carol is his muse. And if he is using the expression muse with a comma right after Carol, it implies that he calls Carol the muse. Okay. And then he says, Belinda may vouchsafe to view. Vouchsafe means she might, feel good about it, allow it, consent to it. So Belinda is also acting as a sort of muse figure for him. And then he says, slight is the subject, but not so the praise, if she inspire and he approve my lays. Now there is a direct adaptation from another book. And what is that adaptation? He takes it from Virgil's Georgics, and the expression or the couple of lines that we have in Virgil is, slight is the subject, but the praise not small, if heaven assist and Phoebus hear my call. So here we can say that he is plagiarizing. It's not plagiarism, because he is using already existing set of lines, conventions, and he is very intelligently changing the context. And by changing the context, he is giving new meaning to the lines. So when he is saying slight is the subject, he is talking about the main theme of his book. In case of Virgil, he was writing about these bees and their life and everything. And for him, that was a slight subject, because that was like below the level of human activities. But here he is talking about human activities. So when he is talking about human activities and calling it slight, then he is not exactly copying from Virgil, but using Virgil to suit his own purpose. Say what strange motive, goddess, could compel a well-bred lord assault a gentle belle. He is now addressing the muse as the goddess. Now earlier we have seen that he had put a comma after Carol and wrote the word muse, and we assume that John Carroll is his muse. So if John Carroll is his muse, why is he addressing the muse as a goddess? Again, that is because traditionally the 9 Greek muse figures, they were all female figures. And the questions he is asking are, number 1, why should a well-bred lord, that is a gentleman of high society, why would he assault a gentle belle? Belle means a woman. A gentle woman means not just any soft and well-mannered woman, although the word gentle means that. Here gentlewoman or gentle belle means a woman belonging to gentility, or again that high society. The word assault is important here. Assault usually refers to any attack, and generally there is a sexual connotation to it. So Pope uses this word deliberately as a sexual innuendo, and he says that why should a gentleman assault a gentle lady? And the second question is, oh, say what stranger cause, I mean something even stranger than this attack is the fact that what stranger cause yet unexplored could make a gentle belle reject a lord? I mean, how can a woman of high birth reject a man of high birth? So what he is saying is that it is very strange when a man assaults a woman, both belonging to the high society. But it is even more strange if a woman refuses a man. He has already started to raise these questions in us, that the consent question or the concept of a woman's choice so far as her husband or choice of marriage is concerned, these questions are stupid questions, because women are not supposed to refuse men of their society. In tasks so bold can little men engage, and in soft bosoms dwell such mighty rage. So there is this bold task of assaulting a woman. So assaulting a woman is considered to be a bold task here, and little men engage in that. Why is he calling this central figure who attacks a little man? Because Lord Peter, on whose character the Baron is created, he happened to be a man of low stature. I mean, he didn't have a great height. Pope himself was not tall because of his spine disease. So on one hand, it might mean men in general who engage in stupid things are little men, or specifically Lord Peter, who was not a tall man. And then he says, and in soft bosoms, women's breasts, dwell such mighty rage. So how can women have so much anger in them? Because they are supposed to be meek and docile creatures, because they look so soft. So what Pope is doing in these first few lines is he is juxtaposing, which means that he is placing opposite to each other a high style and a low subject. He is using, you see, words like dire, mighty contest, assault, task so bold, mighty rage. So all these adjectives and nouns, they give off an air of epic grandeur. But what he is actually talking about is little men and women with soft bosoms. So he is taking the examples of epics, not just Greek or classical epics, but the epic that was published only 20 years before his birth, that is Paradise Lost. And throughout this poem, we will see reflections and sometimes actual phrases bodily taken out of Milton's book, because his readers, their memories of Milton were fresh and they could immediately identify. And by identification, they could understand what Pope was actually doing. He is applying something huge and magnificent to something stupid and little. And that is creating a lot of humor for his readers, at least. Now the real text. Sol through white curtains shot a timorous ray, and oped those eyes that must eclipse the day. Look at the rhyme, the heroic couplet. And this rhyme gives a rising sense of climax. And the words he uses, they could very well be used in context of something really, really epic. Sol means the sun god, the Roman name for sun god. And he is using this word because he wants to talk about the god sun and not just the natural object which makes the day bright. Sol, and what does Sol do? He shoots a timorous ray. Timorous means something which is tender, hesitant, of low brightness, flickering. So it is shooting a less bright ray. And where is it shooting? And oped those eyes that must eclipse the day. So somebody is sleeping, their eyes are closed, and the sun's rays, they hesitantly fall on those eyes because they are scared. They don't want to wake this person up because this person's eyes are so bright that if they open, then the sun will feel eclipsed because her eyes are brighter than the sun. If you are familiar with Shakespeare's sonnet, my mistress's eyes are nothing like the sun, you would know that comparing eyes of the beloved or a beautiful lady to that of the sun is a common Elizabethan practice, especially by sonnet writers. And Shakespeare was writing against that tradition. And here Pope is making fun of that tradition, saying that this woman's eyes were brighter than the sun. And throughout The Rape of the Lock, we will see Belinda is compared to the sun in many different ways. This is the first instance. So this is the bedroom of this woman who is sleeping, and the sun wakes her up. Now lapdogs give themselves the rousing shake. From where does lapdogs come? Lapdogs were very common in aristocratic societies because lapdogs don't serve any other purpose than being lapdogs, and they have this air of aristocracy about them. So if a woman carries a lapdog with her, it was considered to be very classy, and Belinda happened to have a lapdog. Now this lapdog saw that the mistress was awake, so that lapdog was also awake. Normally dogs, they wake up pretty early in the morning. The guard dogs and the dogs which are used for hunting, so that kind of active working dogs, they wake up pretty early, they go about their routine. But these lap dogs, they imitate their masters or mistresses, and since the mistress, she is lying there sleeping, so the lap dog also sleeps even when it's past its waking hours. So this lap dog shakes itself, wakes up, and sleepless lovers just at 12 awake. Now when somebody is in love, they don't sleep, right? But here Pope is saying that basically so-called sleepless lovers are the ones who sleep the most, because they go on sleeping and dreaming and thinking about their beloved, and that goes on. So sleepless lovers is a self-contradictory phrase, because if you are a lover, you are not sleepless, you are pretty much sleeping till midday, because it's just at 12. So they are waking up at 12 o'clock. And then what does Belinda do right after she wakes up? Does she get up, get ready, go out, work out, something like that? No. Thrice rung the bell, the slipper knocked the ground, and the pressed watch returned a silver sound. So she calls for her maid. And how does she call her? She doesn't raise a voice. She rings a bell, wherever the bell is. So she is ringing the bell 3 times, which means she's pretty impatient. She wants the maid to come immediately. And then seeing that she is not here yet, usually these maids or these waiting women, they used to stay at some antechamber right next to the bedroom of these women. So after ringing the bell, she makes a sound with her slipper. Slipper knocked the ground. That knock sound is, you can almost hear it. And the pressed watch returned a silver sound. Now what is a pressed watch? Normally when you have a watch with you at night, you check the time. Nowadays we have cell phones, right? We can simply switch on the cell phone and see the time. But back then there were no cell phones, and sometimes people wanted to see the time to see if it was time for them to wake up or not. So they used to keep these watches, and because at night you could not see the time, a special button was there in the watch. If you press that button or that lever, then the watch would sound to the nearest quarter of an hour. I mean, if it was closer to 3 o'clock, it would sound 3. If it was closer to 2 o'clock, it would sound 2. It was not exact to the second or minute, because it's not possible to, ring that way. So it used to ring to the closest hour. Let's assume that. Now, this was useful when you were sleeping at night, when it's dark. But we know that already the sun has shone. Already it was midday, and Belinda could very well see the time. But instead, she presses to hear the time. Why? Because she is not ready to open her eyes at all. Oh, come on. Everybody loves that second time nap after waking up, and Belinda loves it so much more because she is a gentle belle. Belinda, still her downy pillow pressed, Downy because the pillows, they are soft, and downy also because these pillows, they were made from feathers that were collected from the downy feathers of ducks. Okay, so they were very soft. And Belinda was kind of taking a second effort at sleeping. Her guardian Sylph prolonged the balmy rest. So she was having rest. You cannot call it rest because she was not working, she was sleeping. But it is shown as if she is so tired of sleeping that she needs more sleep for resting. And who is helping her do that? Her guardian Sylph. Guardian Sylph? Sylph, you remember? The 4 kinds of supernatural creatures. Out of them, the Sylphs were the creatures who belong to the air. And she had one particular Sylph as her guardian angel, you can say. And he made sure that she was sleeping well. It was he. And how did he help her sleep more? It was he had summoned to her silent bed. Look at the repetitive use of the consonant S, almost serpentine. And that also has this effect of sleep on us. It was he had summoned to her silent bed the morning dream that hovered over her head. The dream that Belinda was dreaming was created by this guardian Sylph. A youth more glittering than a birthnight bew. When a youth or young man is described as a glittering man or a good-looking man, many metaphors are used or similes are used, but Pope chooses to use the expression more glittering than a birthnight bew. Birthnight bew means a person on his birthday. So this means that because it's high society, people throw a party on their birthdays and they dress up in glittering dresses, and this youth happens to look like that. So this guardian angel is making her see a dream where a youth, a young man, glittering young man, is saying her something. So actually this is the guardian angel who is transforming as this figure of the youth speaking to her. That even in slumber caused her cheek to glow, and that man, that young man, made Belinda feel very blushy and shy. Seemed to her ear his winning lips to lay, and thus in whispers said or seemed to say. Now, whenever I see this whole image of somebody whispering to someone's ears in sleep, I am reminded of that episode where Satan, he comes up to Eve in the Garden of Eden and gives these ideas in her head through her ears when she's asleep. And so this whole trope, whole idea of temptation is reenacted here, but in a very stupid little way. How? Let's see. What is this angel telling? Belinda is dreaming. Okay, she is not conscious actually of what is being told, but nonetheless these words are said in her ears when she is dreaming. Fairest of mortals, thou distinguished care of 1,000 bright inhabitants of air. So we, the Sylphs, we are bright inhabitants of air. So we stay in the air and we take care of you. If ever one vision touch thy infant thought, of all the nurse and all the priest have thought. So Pope is here talking about visions that Belinda might have had. What visions? We have this idea that the more you study, the more you gather materialistic knowledge, the further you go from the world of nature, the world of imagination, right? This is what we always believe. So if Belinda is not a well-read person, she must have a lot of imaginative stuff going on in her head, a lot of visions. Now that's a very generalized idea I'm saying. I'm not saying that a person who is well read is not imaginative, no. But it is said that usually children, innocent children, they see things, they believe things, they have these flashes, and when they grow up, they gather more and more material knowledge, they seem to rationally understand their sights, and that takes the magic away. So let's say that this guardian self, it feels that Belinda is still on that state of innocence, but this is Pope's way of telling us that Belinda is as stupid as a child. Now this expression of all the nurse and all the priest have taught, this is very important. I'll tell you why. In Dryden's Hind and the Panther, and I'll quote it here, he says, "By education most have been misled. The priest continues what the nurse began." Nurse means somebody who takes care of children when they are very young. So while taking care of the children, the nurses, they tell stories, fairy tales, and they are mostly nonsensical, they don't have much logic in them. But it is seen that later when education is imparted to these people, if this education is imparted by priests, okay, religious figures, then they continue that tradition of nonsensical study, which means the stories about saints, about visions, these are nothing but fairy tales. So what the nurses start, the priests continue. And Pope is saying here, or rather this guardian elf is saying, or Sylph is saying here, that out of all the imaginary stories that the nurses or the priests have taught you, if any vision has ever touched you of airy elves, so maybe you have heard different stories from nurses and priests, but if you have ever heard a story of the elves, that is our story. This is what this guardian self is saying. Of airy elves by moonlight shadows seen, the silver token and the circled green. Now usually the stories about elves and small little fairies, they involve a lot of rituals with green circles and silver tokens. I remember specifically like when my child was pretty young and she used to lose her tooth now and then, she used to keep the tooth under her pillow and in the morning she used to get some money there. Of course, well, a real fairy didn't turn up, but she had this belief that the tooth fairy comes. So fairies are often associated with these silver tokens, some gifts. So these stories were stories which Belinda must have heard about in her young days. Of airy elves by moonlight shadows seen, the silver token and the circle green, or virgins visited by angel powers. Now the earlier stories were about stupid little fairies. Virgins visited by angel powers are the stories given in the Bible. You already know about these virgins. Don't you know about Mother Mary, who was visited by an angel who told her that she's going to give birth to the Son of God? And then we have Joan of Arc. She was also visited by an angel and she got inspired to free her country. So these virgins were visited by angels, and these are stories given in the Bible. And in a single breath, Pope is equating the childish stories of fairies with the so-called serious stories of the Bible, saying that all belong to the same category, just like Dryden did. With golden crowns and wreaths of heavenly flowers. Now these figures of Mother Mary, of Joan of Arc, they are like divine figures now, and the angels who visited them, they promised this kind of glory to these women. So we can say that this interaction between the guardian Sylph and Belinda is kind of a trivialized reenactment of that moment where the angel spoke to Mother Mary, or the angel spoke to Joan of Arc. And Pope's poem, The Rape of the Lock, is all about reenactment in a trivialized way. So not just words, but through the action of the poem, Pope is establishing this tradition of reenactment, redoing. So the Sylphs talking to Belinda is a redoing of the angels talking to Mother Mary. Hear and believe, thy own importance know. And this is usually the kind of words that these angels, they address the virgins with, that you should know how important you are the chosen one. Nor bound thy narrow views to things below. You are not made for stupid small little things of this low world. Some secret truths from learned pride concealed. This is what I was talking about, that if you are a learned person, then that childish faith is gone, that childish innocence is gone. And this is something which we see reflected in the ideas of Wordsworth much later, that child is the father of the man, which shows that a child's innocence is capable of understanding more about the world than the wisdom of the father who is learned. So here Belinda, who is definitely not an educated person here in the poem at least, to her secret truths are told because she is not learned. Because if she was learned, she would start rationalizing the whole thing. What is this? This is only a dream. This must not be real. This must be something inside my psyche and all that. Because she is not going to rationalize her visions, therefore she takes it to be secret truths. To maids alone and children are revealed. Children because they are not educated yet, and maids because they are never educated at all. So that's the tragic part of the society in which Pope was living, that women were kind of accused of being stupid as children. But was anything done by these men to improve their condition? I mean, I never heard of Pope actually doing something to educate any one single woman he came across in his life. I'm not accusing him. But he was accusing women of something for which they were not responsible, not entirely responsible at least. Anyway, I'm not trying to blame here Pope for anything. He was kind of a victim of a situation where it was quite normal for people to look at women in this way. In the Dunciad, Pope actually uses very bitter words to refer to a woman author of his times. Quite unforgivable. Anyway, let's come back to the text. What though no credit doubting wits may give? People who have wit, they doubt everything, they want to rationalize everything, and so they don't give any credit to these visions. But these maids and children, because they are not educated, they believe in anything that they dream of or they might accidentally see. And now the guardian Sylph is giving some information to Belinda. Know then, unnumbered spirits round thee fly, the light militia of the lower sky. So just now he was talking about the fact that Belinda should not concern herself with things that lie low and stuff, and then he is saying that his army, the militia, the word is a great word, but is the militia of the lower sky. So in the hierarchy of aerial creatures, aerial means who belong to the air. There are many creatures who belong to the air. The angels belong to the air, and there are many other forms. The Sylphs come pretty low in the hierarchy. So we are the light militia of the lower sky. These, though unseen, are ever on the wing, hang over the box and hover round the ring. These tiny little creatures, they are always alert, and where are they found? They are found in the box or the ring. It's not the box or the ring as objects. These are specific places in theatres where the audience sit. The box happens to be the reserved area for aristocratic ladies and rich people. The ring is the circling area. So the focus of these airy creatures is the theatres, when people go and watch a play. And where else? Think what an equipage thou hast in air, and view with scorn 2 pages and a chair. Now, since in those days people didn't have cars or motor vehicles, how did they move around from one place to another? If you were rich, you would actually sit in a chair and 2 people could carry you. That is like 2 pages and a chair, or you could have a carriage of your own. So just like nowadays, men compete with each other based on which model bike they own or which model car they have. That becomes a mark of their aristocracy. That becomes something they impress women with, because somehow men have always thought that women could be impressed by the carriages men own, and well, maybe women have given them enough evidence to build that theory. Okay, so this happened back then as well. A man with a big chariot, a lot of pages means servants, they attracted more attention of women than a man with, say, like 2 pages and a chair, just lifting him up like he's like a stretcher almost. Anyway, so this guardian Sylph is saying that you have an equipage, you have like this series of carriages of airy creatures, so you should not be impressed by a mortal man who might offer you a chair and 2 pages, which means that he is asking her to reject any proposal from any man who might offer her petty comforts. As now your own, our beings were of old, and once enclosed in woman's beauteous mold. Now this Sylph goes on to talk about the origin of Sylphs and says that our beings, which means our existences, they were once enclosed in women's bodies. So in other words, a Sylph is born when a woman is dead. Since then, or thence by a soft transition, we repair from earthly vehicles to these of air. Soft transition here refers to death. So you see what Pope does here. When he is talking about little things, he is using grand expressions. And when he is talking about real solid deep thing like death, he is using soft words like soft transition. Who calls death a soft transition? And this is like a reflection of Ovid's Metamorphoses, who says that after death you get transformed into something else. After death, what happens to the women? We repair from earthly vehicles to these of air. Now vehicles, here it has 2 meanings. Of course, the primary meaning is the body. The human body is compared to a vehicle. So earlier, before death, these Sylphs, they were inside the vehicles of the human body, and now they are in the vehicles of air. In other words, or rather another meaning is, they used to be in actual vehicles which men drive, and now they are in the vehicles that are driven in air. Real meaning of vehicle remains same in the second meaning. So the point is, after death, women transform, and they are transformed according to the nature that they exhibit when they are alive. Think not, when woman's transient breath is fled. Transient means which is not permanent. So our life is like a transient breath. It ends eventually. So don't think that when a woman dies, that all her vanities at once are dead. Now vanities usually refer to prudish qualities and this feelings of pride and things which are not substantial. It is associated with the word vain, which means proud. He doesn't use the word quality here. He doesn't say that women's qualities are not, because according to Pope here in this poem, women have only one quality, that is vanity. They don't have any substantial qualities at all. They don't have qualities like erudition, philosophical insight, even kindness and humanity. All they have is vanity, and after they are dead, their vanity gets transformed into something. What is that something? Succeeding vanities she still regards. So after her death, she becomes something and looks at the succeeding vanities, which means women who are not yet dead. They are succeeding her. And though she plays no more, overlooks the cards. So maybe a woman is playing cards and some woman is dead, transformed into a sylph. And now her job is to supervise that card game. Not in an active way, just overlooks the card. You don't determine the fate there. You can't decide that who's going to win there. You can simply see the card game. So this is like a consolation kind of a thing. You become like a ghost who cannot interfere in human lives, and at the same time can watch the people who are still alive. Her joy in gilded chariots when alive, as I was saying, women are very impressed by these decorated chariots. When alive, and love of ombre after death survive. Ombre is a card game, and women in those days, they were pretty interested in playing ombre. For when the fair in all their pride expire. Now, he actually calls women a combination of two things, fair and pride. Two things which are not actually considered to be a positive trait at all. So, if you are a woman, you are made of fair and pride, fairness and pride, whatever that means. Here, fair has nothing to do with just or being just. Fair means beauty or beautiful. So, the beauty in a woman and pride in a woman are the two things which women are made of. So, when they are dead, their fair is gone, the pride remains. For when the fair in all their pride expired, to their first elements their souls retire. Now, this categorization of the human soul into aspects of like the Rosicrucian way of looking at things, that is brought in here. And this tendency to categorize humans as types, this is very common when you look at the comedy of humors that Ben Jonson started. There also he categorized human beings depending on the kind of humors they had or the kind of bodily fluid that controlled their actions, their thoughts. And there were 4 kinds of humans. Okay. Similarly, we have here a categorization based on the kind of nature a woman exhibits when she is alive. So, if you are this kind of woman, you become that kind of supernatural creature. And what are the categories here? Let's see. The sprites of fiery termagants in flame mount up and take a salamander's name. So, first category is the salamander. They belong to the world of the fire. Why? Because these salamanders are basically these color changing lizards, you can say. They look like that, and they have this sometimes beautiful fiery coloration on their bodies. So, somehow salamanders are linked with fire. And women, a fiery spirit, they turn into salamanders. What does Pope mean by fiery spirit? Fiery means somebody who expresses her opinion in a bold way, somebody who has an opinion on something, somebody who doesn't care much about impressing people, somebody who actually, like we today, would rather approve of. They are kind of disapproved in Pope's times and said that they are turned into salamanders, and salamanders are not, they're not pleasing things to be the least. So, fiery women, they become salamanders. Soft yielding minds to water glide away and sip with nymphs their elemental tea. Nymphs, water creatures, more like mermaids, you can say. And what kind of women become nymphs? The soft yielding minds. Just like water, wherever you keep water, it takes the shape of the container. Similarly, these women, soft yielding women, yielding means surrendering. They surrender to everything, they accept everything meekly, they become nymphs. And while speaking about this word tea, you might ask me that he is using the word away and then he is using the word tea. There is no rhyme there. Now the point is, the word tea during Pope's time, that was pronounced as something like te. So it rhymed with away. So he might say elemental te. Okay. Tea was something rather new then, and that was the traditional way to pronounce it. This phrase, elemental tea, it itself is very peculiar because tea is a normal worldly drink. When you say words like elemental, you associate it with words like nectar or honeydew, Kubla Khan's honeydew. And in Indian tales, we use words like amrit. We don't say elemental tea. So the fact that he's associating these two words together shows his intention that he is not trying to glorify tea. He's trying to belittle elemental. Okay, so that is his focus. By joining something great with something little, he is not glorifying the little. He is de-glorifying, demystifying the great. Alright. Next, we have the third category. The graver prude sinks downward to a gnome. In gnome, you don't pronounce G. You just call it gnome. The graver prude, that means somebody who disapproves of everybody else. If somebody is flirting with someone, if somebody is flattery with somebody, and you have this woman who is like very disapproving, her only motto is to do things very properly, and the only point in being alive is to get married in a proper way to a proper man with a proper career and proper chariots. So everything has to be on the basis of seriousness, and that is equated with being prude. And those women, they become gnomes. In search of mischief, still on earth to roam. Why mischief? Because whenever they see these light-hearted women giggling about, they come to some mischief, to ruin their fun. So they are fun-ruining people because they are serious people. And Pope presents them as mischievous, although I have already told you in the last class that gnomes were associated with these earthly treasures, treasures hidden, and they are presented in this peculiar mischievous light by Pope to suit his purpose. And remember, who is speaking here? In Paradise Lost also, I always ask you to pay attention to the speaker. Sometimes when Satan is seen to be very glorified, it's usually when he is speaking. His glorification is through his own words. So this is spoken by the Sylph. So obviously, the Sylph will present the gnome in a negative light. If it was the gnome's speech, well, he might say things in a different way. The light coquettes in Sylphs aloft repair, and sport and flutter in the fields of air. Coquettes means flirtatious women, women who love a lot of attention, who don't engage in serious relationship with one single man, but loves to have attention of many. They are not deliberately disloyal. They are not loyal to anybody. So if you are not loyal to anybody, you are not actually disloyal to anyone. You are not committed to anyone. So you are not breaking anyone's heart, so to say. And when you die, you become a Sylph. No further yet, whoever, fair and chaste, rejects mankind. So if you are a fluttery person, but you reject commitment, you don't be like a prude woman who accepts a man's proposal, then is by some Sylph embraced. So again, there is this reenactment of the virgin mother, In order to be embraced by divinity, you need to remain a virgin. Here, the same kind of trope is used, that you cannot commit yourself to any man, but you can flirt about, you can attract a lot of attention, that is okay, but you cannot fix yourself to one man. And so long as you remain virgin in that way, you will be embraced by a Sylph, as if being embraced by a Sylph is a great thing. For spirits, freed from mortal laws, with ease, assume what sexes and what shapes they please. Now, since the Sylph was originally a woman, after a woman dies, she becomes a Sylph. Now, because these are supernatural creatures, they don't have any fixed sex. They are not male or female. So if Belinda has this doubt in her that I am a woman, Sylph is a woman, if I reject a man and get embraced by a woman, I might not like it. So Pope assures, or rather this guardian angel assures that they will transform into a man, don't worry. Now this is again a reenactment of the lines from Paradise Lost, where Milton actually says that the spirits can either sex assume, when he was talking about Baalim and Ashtaroth. Okay, so those rebel angels, some were male and some were female, because they didn't have to have any one single sexual identity. So that is kind of brought in here. Assume what sexes and what shapes they please, what guards the purity of melting maids. Now he talks about see, I am also subconsciously using the pronoun he when I am talking about this guardian Sylph. This Sylph is supposed to be a woman figure. But somehow we have this notion that any guarding figure is like a man or a male figure here. Plus this Sylph is actually dressed like a birthnight beau, which is a man. And what is the function of these Sylphs? What do? They guard the purity of melting maids. Melting means women who are on the verge of accepting a proposal. Your resistance is going away. At that point, the Sylph stops you from accepting a sexual advance, to give consent. The Sylph stops you. That is guarding the purity of melting maids. Where is this challenged? Where does this happen? Where does a woman have to be protected? In courtly balls and midnight masquerades, all the places where people throw parties, these situations arise where the Sylphs protect the women. Safe from the treacherous friend, the daring spark. Spark is a lively man, heart of the party, that kind of a man. The glance by day, the whisper in the dark. So all these familiar actions or activities of courtship, where a woman is tempted, all these activities are listed here where the Sylphs protect the women. When kind occasion prompts their warm desires, when they are tempted, when music softens and when dancing fires, it is but their Sylph, the wise celestials know. They are the wise divine figures. Celestials means heavenly. It is but their Sylph, the wise celestials know, though honor is the word with men below. People think that it is a sense of honor that stops women from, falling into the trap of temptation. But it's basically a Sylph. So every woman is assigned one Sylph. Every woman who stays away from men. Just like this woman, Belinda, is under the care of this particular guardian, Sylph. Some nymphs, there are too conscious of their face. Now, there are some women. Now, he is using the word nymph here as a general term for women. There is a word called nymph in the 4 categories: sylph, gnome, salamander and nymph. Here, nymph means women in general. Is it trying to say that the category of nymph is actually the category of women which is advised, or rather which is desired of women? What is the category of nymph? The submissive, the surrendering type. So that is the advisable role women should play. That's why women in general are called nymphs. I don't know, that's a question raised in my mind. I just thought about it. You can give it some thought too. So here nymphs means women in general. Some nymphs, there are too conscious of their face, they are too conscious of their beauty, and because they are too conscious of their face, they are very proud. And because they are very proud, they end up being very prude and they disapprove of other women, they become bitter, and instead of sylphs, gnomes become their guardian angel. For life predestined to the gnomes' embrace, these swell their prospects and exalt their pride. These women, they are pretty career oriented when relationships come. They only think about their position in society, how to improve it. When offers are disdained and love denied, these things are immaterial to them. They only decide based on materialistic gains. And so they deny offers. Then gay ideas crowd the vacant brain, while peers and dukes and all their sweeping train and garters, stars and coronets appear, and in soft sounds your grace salutes their ear. So all they think about every day is the kinds of men that are available to them. They make comparisons based on the kind of chariots they have, on the garters, stars and coronets, the decorative pieces, the medals of honors that they have. So they make a comparative study of the available options. And they are used to this expression, your grace, which means they are very obsessed about the social class that they belong to. This is the category of women who are under the guidance of the gnomes. And usually, your grace is associated with women belonging to the highest rank of society. Okay, like maybe a duchess. So, a prude woman, all she dreams about is to become a duchess so that people go on calling her using words like your grace. It is these, the gnomes, that early taint the female soul, instruct the eyes of young coquettes to roll. So, what is the function of the gnomes? How is it different from the sylphs? Sylphs take care of all women who are bubbly and cheerful and attract the attention of men. But the gnomes change these women into women who are still attractive, but they channelize their graces, their beauty, to trap one single man. And how do they do that? The gnomes, they teach the female soul, or rather these women, instruct the eyes of young coquettes to roll. So they roll their eyes to attract men and teach infant cheeks a bidden blush to know. Blush is usually when your cheek, they turn red, when you are shy, when you want to hide your emotion, but you're feeling very coy about something. So blushing is associated with secretly falling in love. Bidden blush is when you create that blush. Bid means to order something. Blush is a natural reaction. You fall in love with somebody, that person comes and you blush. But when you are applying, say, makeup, okay, you are applying a lot of red patches on your cheek, which gives an effect of a blush. It is actually called a blush. You buy a blush in a cosmetics shop. And this is taught by the gnomes. They teach women to apply blush or blush on so that they might be attractive to men and eventually get a high social life. And little hearts to flutter at a view. Flutter means, flutter your eyelashes to show attraction. So what the gnomes do is they teach the artifices of love, the artificial actions of love. Again, another way of reenactment of what is natural and real. So this is what the purpose of the gnomes is. Oft when the world imagine women stray, the sylphs through mystic mazes guide their way. So when women are stray, sometimes they fall into the temptation. It is the sylphs who bring them back. Through all the giddy circle they pursue the old impertinence, expelled by new. Impertinence means again small little thing of no value. What tender maid but must a victim fall to one man's treat but for another's ball? So it is very bad, if a man throws a party, you go there and you fall for another man. That is like real bad. If you are throwing a party, everybody should fall for you. That is the social logic which Pope is actually attacking. When Florio speaks, what virgin could withstand if gentle Damon did not squeeze her hand? Florio, Damon, these are random names of men, and these names are pretty common in pastoral love poetry. So he uses them again deliberately. What he means is romantic men, they tempt women all the time and it's very difficult to ignore them. With varying vanities from every part, they shift the moving toy shop of their heart. This is the primary condition of being under the care of the sylphs. You need to be able to move the toy shop of your heart. What is a toy shop? Literally, it means a shop which sells toys. Contextually, it meant the kind of shops that used to sell these, Valentine related objects, love objects, things you gift each other, like that old age Archie's or Hallmark shops. Okay. And women's hearts are compared to toy shops. So the women who are under the care of the sylphs, they don't sell their commodities to one single person, but keep on shifting their toy shops. So they are like this open market. This is almost abusive the way he is talking about women's heart here. Anyway, where wigs with wigs and sword knots strive, bews banish bews and coaches drive. So what do the women see in the men? They see wigs that they wear, which means the appearance. Sword knots strive. So it's not like people are actually fighting with each other to impress the women. Sword knots are not swords. It's a riband which is tied to the hilt of the sword. It's like a decorative part of the sword. So women are more bothered about what kind of decoration he uses. So here men didn't have to be actually brave and powerful to impress women, because women were impressed by these vain things like sword knots and wigs and coaches. This erring mortals levity may call. Now just what I was saying, that these are very small little things. These are not actual real things women should think about. And then Pope says, don't call it levity, don't call it little things. Oh, blind to truth, the sylphs contrive it all. This is the workmanship of the sylphs, the strategy of the sylphs, to keep the minds of the maidens engaged in these levity, these little things, so that they can stay away from commitment, because they focus on entertainment. Now, to place this whole idea in today's context, let me tell you this. Suppose you see that somebody's Facebook status says that the person is single. Then that person woman, let's say, young woman, her status is single. She will have a lot of inbox messages all the time and friend requests and everything. The moment she turns into committed, number of messages reduce. If she turns married, well, unless she is like too attractive or something, or some man is real crazy, then she'll have a couple of messages, maybe. So if you are single, then chances of getting attention increases. Simple economics of courtship, you can say. The same thing is happening here. The Sylphs ensure that they remain single so that they get this whole span of attention, because these Sylphs, they love attention, and through these women they satisfy their own desire for these little pleasures of life. I hope you get my point now. Alright, let's move on. And now he finally gives his real identity, or rather his name. Of these am I, who thy protection claim. A watchful sprite, and Ariel is my name. Late, as I range the crystal wilds of air. So he gives his name first, that his name is Ariel. Ariel is also the name of that mischievous and sweet spirit we have in the Tempest. And what information does Ariel give now? Late, as I range the crystal wilds of air, as I was roaming about in the air, in the clear mirror of thy ruling star, so there is some star which rules Belinda's life, I saw, alas, some dread event impend. Something bad, something awful is about to happen. To the main this morning sun descend. Main here means the ocean, the sea. It is believed that the sun rises and then sets in the ocean. So before the sun sets today, something awful is going to happen. But heaven reveals not what or how or where. Warned by thyself, O pious maid, beware. So he is as lousy a speaker of prophecy as Macbeth's witches were, only giving partial information that's going to actually ruin the person in the end. He says that I don't know the details, but something bad is going to happen, so you have to be very careful. This to disclose is all thy guardian can. I see, this is everything I can do about it. Beware of all, but most beware of man. So the danger is going to come from a man. That is all he can say. He said, and then Ariel stops speaking, and then the lapdog jumps. When Shock, who thought she slept too long, leapt up and waked his mistress with a tongue. Now it was too much even for that lapdog. Lapdogs who usually go on sleeping when their mistress or master sleeps. Even that lapdog now feels that it's too much now. She actually needs to get up. So here is the point where Belinda wakes up. I am going to finish this whole canto right today. So if you are feeling a little bit tired listening to this thing, you can take a little break, come back to it. But it is important that you reach the end of this canto at one go. It was then, Belinda, if reports say true, thy eyes first opened on a billetto. Billetto means a love letter. So somebody might have written her a love letter and she must have slept with it. And after she woke up, she reads it again. And then what happens? Wounds, charms and ardors were no sooner read, but all the vision vanished from her head. So all these words that had been poured in her head, in her dream, all vanished when she read those words in the love letter, which were, these typical words like wounds and charms and such high sounding words. So now she has awakened, and what is her first job? And now unveiled, the toilet stands displayed. Toilet here means the dressing table. And how is the dressing table described? And each silver vase in mystic order laid. Now, when somebody's dressing table is arranged, those different kinds of cosmetics, if that person is very fashion conscious, they are arranged in a nice way. And there is no recommended order of arranging them. You just arrange it according to your aesthetic sense, according to your preference, your usage tendency, whatever you use more are more in your reach and all that. But Pope describes that arrangement as something very mysterious. It's a mystic order. First, robed in white, the nymph intent adores with head uncovered the cosmetic powers. Nymph here is Belinda. She is robed in white, her dress is white, and her head is uncovered, and she is looking at the cosmetic powers. Now, this whole setup is again a reenactment of what? Of a divine ritual. As if a priestess, she is standing in front of the altar and looking at these mysteriously arranged things and deciding what to use to offer her prayers to divinity. A heavenly image in the glass appears. Now, when she is looking at the dressing table, she is looking at herself, right? Now, if she is the priestess, as I was saying, who is the god here? Her own image which she is looking at. So, she is the priestess, she is the divinity. And this whole idea gives you the idea of Narcissa. Narcissa is that old tale you find in Ovid's Metamorphoses, where this person was so much in love with his own face, turns into a flower who looks at the pond, the flower Narcissa. And this concept of being in love with somebody's own face, gazing at your face all the time, is associated with the word narcissism. So we can call Belinda quite narcissistic here. And what does she see here? A heavenly image in the glass appears. To that she bends, to that her eyes she rears. Now, when we worship gods, how do we worship? We bend our heads, we raise our heads. But is she actually doing that to her own image? Is she actually bending her head and raising her head? Yes, but not for worshipping. You see, imagine a woman getting ready, putting makeup. What do we do? What do women do? Or even men? We pick up a piece of an eyeliner, raise our eyes, we apply it, put it down, pick up a lipstick, put it, then put it down. So the movement of the head becomes like that, movement of worship, prayer. But Belinda is not actually praying, is she? To that she bends, to that her eyes she rears, the inferior priestess at her altar's side. Now, remember, she had called for that maid in the very beginning. That maid has finally arrived, and that maid, her name is Betty. We will have the name just after a few lines. She is called the inferior priestess. Belinda is the superior priestess because she is of a higher rank, and her image is the god. An inferior priestess is the assistant who is helping her get ready. At her altar's side, altar is the place where you worship a god. Okay? Trembling begins the sacred rites of pride. So rituals begin. What rituals? Rituals of makeup. Trust me. Sometimes the way women put on their makeup is actually as long as divine rituals. It's not always just about eyeliners and lipsticks and mascaras. It's like it goes on for hours for some women. And this is what happens with Belinda. Unnumbered treasures ope at once. And how are these rituals conducted? The boxes are opened in front of her. She is going to pick which particular earrings she's going to wear today, what necklace she's going to wear today. Unnumbered treasures ope at once, and here the various offerings of the world appear. Now, England during this time, it was a pretty strong colonial power, and what England was doing was, kind of looting the whole world, and we're collecting treasures from all over the world and bringing in. And it was very common to find Indian jewels and gems and African precious stones in the jewelry boxes of high-class women, and that is what we see here. And that is called offerings of the world, as if the world was happy to offer England so much. It wasn't, but that's again a funny way of looking at it. From each, she nicely culls with curious toil. It's very, very difficult labor to select which one she's going to use today. And decks the goddess with the glittering spoil. Who is the goddess? Not Belinda, Belinda's image. So Belinda and Betty, they work together to decorate the face which is appearing in front of them on the mirror. Glittering spoil means, spoil is usually something which you get after hunting, something which you get as loot also. So glittering spoil is again kind of oxymoronish, where you're putting two very unsuitable words together. So glittering spoil here means those bright jewels and gems which are obtained from all around the world. This casket, India's glowing gems unlocks. India was pretty popular so far as gems and jewels were concerned. They still have our Kohinoor with them. And all Arabia breathes from yonder box. So there is this box of Indian jewels, and there is this box of Arabian perfume. Where have you heard this expression, Arabian perfume? Well, in Macbeth, Lady Macbeth was screaming, all the perfumes of Arabia could not sweeten this little hand. So even in Shakespeare's time, perfumes of Arabia were pretty famous. There they probably call it attar or something, but Belinda had a stock of Arabian perfumes. The tortoise here, an elephant unite, transformed to combs, the speckled and the white. Combs made from the tusks of elephants, African elephants to be more specific. They used to be white combs, and sometimes tortoise shells were used to make combs. And they obviously were speckled, were spotted. So tortoise and elephant, they are not uniting, but the products made from these animals, the process involving a lot of exploitation, not just of the animals, but of the countries where these animals belong. The products are found in Belinda's dressing table, and it is as if their death is turned into something justified and beautiful because they are combined and married together because of Belinda's dressing table. The audacity of it. Here files of pins extend their shining rows, puffs, powders, patches, Bibles, billettos. Puffs, powders, patches, fine. Dressing table is supposed to have all these things. Puffs, powders also, patches were again these skin patches, part of makeup. Bibles. What has a Bible got to do with patches and powders and puffs? Well, what not? If the image is compared to a godlike figure, why shouldn't a Bible be there on the dressing table? Because in the psyche of Belinda, in the worldview of Belinda, there is no difference between the importance associated with powders and the importance associated with the Bible. And then the anticlimax after Bible, biletto. So in one sentence, Pope is presenting to you such contrary things as if he is raising the whole thing to a climax and then dropping you there with biletto, love letter. Because this is not congruous, this is not expected, this is not natural. But isn't it natural? This is the most natural thing on earth. The randomness which he presents to you is the randomness of Belinda's dressing table. Because her idea of the world is actually random. It is seriously flawed so far as our priorities are concerned. And that is what Pope is talking about. And in her worldview, the pins, the powders, the puffs, they are her weapons. She needs them more than she needs her Bible. Because her Bible won't get her the attention that makes her purpose serve in this life. For her, life is all about being relevant in the eyes of attracted or attractive men. Now, awful beauty puts on all its arms, awful beauty. So, beauty is something which is curated here, created here, with weapons, arms. The fair each moment rises in her charms. How can you increase fairness each moment? By applying more and more of that face powder, that compact. That is what she is doing. Each moment she is increasing the fairness of her skin. Repairs her smiles, putting on a lipstick perhaps, or a lip liner, awakens every grace and calls forth all the wonders of her face. So, what people see as wonders of her face are actually because of the makeup she puts on, the blush lines, the jaw lines, okay, the highlights. So, all these things make her look attractive to other people. Sees by degrees a purer blush arise. Blush is that reddish rouge kind of an application, and she applies that. So she is creating blush. Now the more she is creating blush, is she getting more pure or more impure? She is getting more impure, going away from what is natural in her. But Pope is using the expression purer blush, which means that when a blush is pure or perfect, the woman is actually impure. She is not being herself. So she is sacrificing her reality for this show of blush, pure show of blush, which is actually making her less pure. And keener lightnings quicken in her eyes. Either she is putting on this kohl or eyeliner stuff, or maybe she's actually putting things like some drops of belladonna. They used to do that, to make the eyes very shiny by enlarging the pupils. So she is changing herself, transforming herself. The busy sylphs surround their darling care. So while this is happening, what the sylphs are doing, sylphs are surrounding her, and these set the head and those divide the hair. Some fold the sleeve, whilst others plait the gown, and Betty is praised for labours not her own. The sylphs, they ensure that everything is perfectly done. I wish I had such sylphs with me, because every time I get ready for these videos, either my hair is not parted in the right way, or if I'm wearing a sari, I have a lot of time struggling with the pleats and all, because obviously I don't have sylphs about me. Belinda has, and she has this nicely pleated gown and perfectly parted hair. Her sleeves are nicely folded, and I've often seen women who are exquisitely well dressed, and they take pretty little time to get ready, but they manage to have this look of this prim and perfect beauty. And I'm sure in some mystical way the sylphs might still exist assisting them. So we have reached the end of Canto 1. What we need to look at is Belinda's face is presented to us, her actions are presented to us. What is not presented to us are Belinda's thoughts. We don't get to see her thinking. And in her actions, we don't see any reflection of any intellect at all. In many of the universities or colleges, the syllabus asks you to go for a detailed study of Canto 1 and 3 only. Even in WBSU, that is the syllabus. I will advise you not to skip Canto 2. We will read the second canto in the next class. And if it is not much trouble, I would advise you to just listen to that class. You don't have to sit down and note it down because you don't have it in your exam perhaps if you are in WBSU colleges. Listen to that so that when you come to Canto 3 and again you need to put everything down in paper, you will be more prepared to understand what happens in Canto 3. You have already understood that there is no point in reading the summary of anything. You cannot have a summary of Rape of the Lock because the poem exists in these juxtaposition of words, in these images which he is giving you, in these contrasts and these borrowings from the other epic poets. So if you don't go through line by line, you will not get the flavor and it will become very tiring for you. So I hope to see you all in my next class, that is in my textual reading of Canto 2. If you have any trouble in today's class, do let me know in the comment section. Thank you all for subscribing to my channel. Do share with your friends if you like the content. This is Monami Mukherjee signing off. Stay happy, stay safe. Bye-bye.